Hi, this is Gina Olive with Kingwood Area Quilt Guild, and I'd like to show you how to do an applique technique called Draw, Sew, Trim. I learned Draw, Sew, Trim from a lady named Catalin Horvath. She lives in England. She's originally from Hungary. If you want to see more of her videos on YouTube, go to YouTube and search Draw Sew, S-E-W, Trim. The pieces that she's designed are absolutely fantastic. And I'd like to show you one of her pieces now that I've made using her technique. This is actually her logo that she gave me permission to use in one of my personal pieces. So this is her logo, and I did it doing Draw, Sew, Trim. And you can see all these different pieces in here. It was challenging. So, and as you can see, it's machine done. There's a satin stitch around each one of them. So keep that in mind when you start asking those what about questions. So it's just another method of applique, but what I love about it is you notice like here's a concave curve and then a convex curve on the outside in a lot of the locks of her hair. You don't have to worry about clipping and things of that nature when you do Draw, Sew, Trim because it's all done on machine. So I'm just going to get this out of the way and we're going to get started with the fun. Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to make, on this cake, we're going to focus on this little detail here, this little scalloped icing edge. And I'm just going to work on this piece. But I wanted to show you the pattern so you know that when you're working on something, just like when you're going to plate a meal, you start with the plate and what goes on first and what goes on next, like you're building a pizza. So if you were making a pizza, you'd put the pan, and then you'd put the crust, and then you put the sauce, and then you put the cheese, and then you put the pepperoni, and so forth. So we would do this here first, this stand, and then this piece of cake, and then this blue icing, and then this edging. And then we do the next one, and the next one, and so forth. So just keep that in mind when there may be an order to which you place the pieces when you do applique. So that said, what you need is, and I can't find my stabilizer, so we're going to pretend this is stabilizer. And this is the glue side up side of the stabilizer. So if I run my hands across it, it's rough because there's all those little glue dots, right? So what we're going to do is, this is a little light box. If you have a light box, it will be your bestest friend, I promise. And what we're going to do is we're going to put this glue side up. Let me turn this around so it continually reminds you. Glue side up. And I'm going to take this is a Sharpie permanent marker, and it is an ultra fine point. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace this pattern. Just bear with me, it'll take a minute. So we're going to, you don't want to use a pencil, you don't want to use a ballpoint pen. You need a marker, it could be any kind of marker really, but it needs to be a permanent marker that you can see on the back side of this fabric. Because when we glue it down, when we apply our stabilizer, it's going to be this side down, so we're going to be looking at it on the back side. So if this is a directional piece, say it's a C and it needs to go this direction, this is going to be face up under your fabric. Okay, this is the front of the fabric. So you're drawing face up and you're going to be drawing on the glue dots. So on the back side, you can see this is the back side of your stabilizer. Okay, so let me just put these little dots here, although it's really not necessary. In my finished product, I'm going to put some Hot Fix crystals where these little dots are. But I'll go ahead and complete the pattern. Alright, so we're through with that part. The next step is to take the glue side and you're going to glue dots up are going to go to the back side of your fabric. And you're going to glue that down. Okay? After you glue it down, flip it over, and here's your design. Okay? So I've already done one of those in advance. And here it is. Okay? Here's our design. We're glued on. And we're ready for the next step. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is this kind of reminds me of foundation paper piecing, in that your fabric is on the back side, but you're going to be sewing on these lines ultimately. So what I want to do is kind of help myself with fabric placement, and I'm going to kind of make a line here. I'm putting my pins along the top edge of this design, and then I'll put one down here so I know the bottom edge, although my piece is big enough to cover it. But pins are great because they come out. Alright, and it ends here, and then it ends over here. So now I'm going to flip it over. Now you can see this little line that we make here, 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 and here. So I have this nice big piece of fabric, so I'm not worried about missing that. But I've covered up all of my pin area, and there's plenty to be left over. You don't really have to worry about seam allowances per se. We're not going to fold any of this over, but you do need to make sure and give at least a 1/4 inch to make sure that it grabs it on nice and tight when you zigzag over it. Alright, so, and you notice when I pin this fabric, I'm pinning to where the head of the pin is outside of the field where we're going to be sewing. So just keep that in mind. So you wouldn't want to pin this outward with the head in. Then I'm going to flip this back over, and because it's pinned on the top, I'm going to unpin the bottom pins that I used, because I don't need those anymore. Okay. Now we're going to come over to the sewing machine. And this is a free motion foot that I have on here. See? Free motion foot. Can you do it with a regular foot? Yes, you can. However, I would caution you, if you've got a lot of weird curves like this, a lot of curvy stuff, go very slow and pivot your needle. Don't try and sew it forward and turn it. If you need to stop it and pivot the needle and continue, that's perfectly fine and preferable if you get a better result out of it. So, but for right now, I've got my feed dogs disabled because I'm using my free motion foot. So I'm going to start. I've got a slower speed lock on my machine so I don't go crazy. And I'm going to start. Shut up. And what I'm going to do is I'm just following this black line. And you notice I'm kind of stopping at the end of each point, just kind of reposition and get a good handle on things. Because just like with free motion quilting, you have the best control when your hands are here. If your hands are here, you're not having such great control. Same principle applies with this. Alright, so now we're at the far side, the one end. I'm just going to draw a straight line. And then I'm going to turn this around so I can see where I'm going. See, now I can see kind of where I'm going. Come on, then. These lines are about 1/4 of an inch apart, so you can imagine how much fun it would be to wrap this around freezer paper or do it freestyle. Okay. Lock my stitches and cut them. Alright. So now we're going to come back over to our workspace. And I don't know if you can see, you might can see a little bit better. I apologize, I should have used a different color thread. Can you see the white thread on there? You can now. So this is our stitches. The next step, I really like having this light underneath. These are called duckbill scissors or applique scissors. And when you use them, this side goes on the side where the stitching is. Okay? These scissors are an applique's artist's best friend. Okay, and we are going to cut right at the stitching line, maybe 1 or 2 threads away, but we're not going to leave like a 1/4 inch. You see how I've got it right up there, and we're going to cut this all the way around. Now here's a hint. If by chance you cut the line, no sweat, go and sew it. That's all you have to do. Unless you cut like all the way into it, then that's a bit of a different problem. But take your time. This is the most time-consuming portion of this entire method I've found. But it's also the make or break portion of it. I'm just going to keep on cutting. How this works. Before I had the duckbill on top and the straight on the bottom.